Welcome to Mariana's Press. We're at the Board of Education conference room on Capitol Hill, checking in with the Board of Education chair himself, Aschumar Kodep Ogumoro-Uludong. Thank you and welcome to our program.
Thank you, Tomas. Thanks for having me.
And so I think we checked the calendar. It's been just over 100 days since you were sworn in. How has it been? How has it been so far?
Wow, that's a great question. It's been a great experience coming on board, learning about just how large the public school system is as an organization. In fact, it's the largest public organization, in fact, outside of the central government. I've met so many people in the last 100 days. I thought I knew a lot of people, but it's very clear, you know, there are way more people that I don't know, that I've met, wonderful people, parents, members of the PSS staff, and just a whole bunch of other stakeholders. But it's been a good experience so far, learning the ropes, learning about all that's gone on in PSS through the Board of Education. And I'm very happy to be serving in this capacity.
I remember just a few days after you were sworn in, I checked in with you wanting to accompany you to some schools that you said you were going to visit, and you told me you've already visited them all. So you hit the ground running. With the vice chair, right?
Right.
What did you learn visiting those the schools? What schools did you visit? What were some of your initial takeaways?
So when we had visited, it took us a little while to make it to all 20 schools and a handful of Head Start centers across our 3 islands. I would say that it was wonderful meeting administrators of all of our schools. We had an opportunity to pop into classes and classrooms at each of the campuses. To your question, I think for both myself and Vice Chair Anthony Barcinas, it was a great way. The whole purpose of the school visits was really to introduce ourselves to the stakeholders at the various campuses across the islands. And that was first and foremost. It wasn't so much to, you know, figure out what the problems are or see what areas needed, you know, tackling, right? But it was really just to make that connection to our principals and their teams, to let us know who we are, and some conversations also included our priorities, but really more so that we wanted them to get to know us and establish, you know, that connection and hopefully build rapport with our principals and their teams, and just see the overall state of our various campuses, learn about perhaps some of the priority areas for the schools themselves. And then along the way, we got to learn from the principals or their vice principals a little bit more about the communities that they're serving. So that was very important to both myself and the vice chair.
I know when we first spoke, even before you were swearing in, you were talking about some of your priorities, including, you know, taking a look at the CCLHS program and a move that will require a change to the Constitution, I believe, which is adding having the teacher rep be a voting member of the board, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, tell us maybe what's the progress on those, or how have some of the priorities evolved, given now you've had some time in the seat?
Right. Thank you for that. So, as far as CCLHS, there, as you know, as has also been reported in the news, the commissioner effectuated strategic rotation of senior directors across 3 departments: the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, Student Support Services, and our data department, ARE. And as a result, there's still some transitioning that's taking place across those 3 departments, but CCLHS falls under OCI, the Office of Curriculum and Instruction. And so I've gotten to know, the team there under Senior Director Dr. Rosalina Liwag, and our 2 program managers, Ms. Monica Pua and Ms. Merced De Leon Guerrero, for Carolinian and Chamorro bilingual programs, respectively. I haven't yet had a chance to sit to get a full debrief on what's been happening, although I've been hearing that there have been FTEs for additional Carolinian bilingual program instructors. So that's a good thing. But I have yet to really circle back to get a briefing from the commissioner on how that's going. I'm allowing him time to get the folks, the team members, really settled in, particularly with their new senior director. To your question on a voting teacher rep, right after the election, I did make it a priority to reach out to our teacher rep, Dr. Dora Miura, who I serve with on the board. And yes, she's currently a non-voting rep, and expressed to her that I was very interested in supporting that move. And so part of the reason why I felt it was also important to give the representative on the board representing our teachers that voting ability was to also ensure that a lot of it too had to do with, protection of our teachers, right? And that ties to another issue, which is the current employment contracts for all PSS employees, which is essentially a 2-year contract, at-will contract. So there aren't really any protections that are built into employment contracts for our employees, and so that was also part of the thinking behind ensuring that we get more representation for our teachers through that voting power of their representative on the board. So right now we're tackling the employment contract issue. It's been brought up in our last regular board meeting, and we're still deliberating over how that would look to allow and grant for more employment protections of our employees across the system. And that was also a response to concerns that were brought up by stakeholders, to myself as well as to other members of the board. So it's not a new issue.
You want to remove the at-will clause?
We're looking into it, and we're seeing what would the best fit be for both PSS and the board as the employer, and then members of our PSS staff who are, on the other side of the coin. So, make it a win-win for everybody. But at the end of the day, it's about ensuring that our employees have protections. So I have been having conversations with various folks both in and outside of the system, to include also partners from GDOE and the Guam Education Board, to see how they're doing their employment contracts.
And they have a union on Guam.
They do have a
Right.
union, the Guam Federation of Teachers.
Could we see that here? Is that what you're hearing?
That's a possibility, but my understanding is that their union operates outside of the system, obviously, and it would be a dues-paying union that employees opt into. So it's not it wouldn't be mandated, but should that happen and materialize here, then it would be something that would be an option for teachers. So what I understand too about how it's done in Guam is it's an option, and so not everyone has opted in.
Right. And we got to talk about the budget, right? This is going to be your first budget cycle as Board of Education chair, and so what are you projecting? PSS, getting its 25%, still able to keep its operations at 100%?
So I can't speak too much to your question, except for that there are currently negotiations taking place. We have submitted a proposed budget to the Office of the Governor that they will be including as part of their submission to the legislature. And we're going to wait for the hearings, the budget hearings to take place, to which we'll be present. Right now, they're just, all that's on the table right now are just various scenarios of what it would look like if we were to get a certain amount. And so at this point, I don't know that it's really helpful to really necessarily dive into it. But just to say that we're very cognizant that our economy is in not the greatest place, and that obviously has an impact on revenues, local revenues, of which we derive a substantial portion of our budget from. And so at the end of the day, my job, together with the rest of the board and the commissioner and his team, is to ensure as much as possible that we keep the public school system running in the status quo.
And along those lines, what is it like under the Trump administration and his efforts within Department of Education? I know we're constantly tracking how the bigger picture impacts the local scene, right? But anything major that you're seeing being cut as a result of some of the national cuts
Not
right
the
now?
programs that we benefit from.
Okay.
My understanding is that President Trump is trying to improve efficiencies across the federal government, and he sees that the U.S. Department of Education could be trimmed and at the same time become more efficient. But in that process, and from what I've been informed, what the board has been briefed on by the commissioner, there's no immediate impact from those cuts. What my understanding is that what the president and his administration want to do is get education funding directly to the states and territories and cut out the middleman, if you will.
All right. So we'll continue to track that. But I did want to pivot a little bit, because we both were on Guam in the past. How long has it been? A month, maybe, at this
Not
point?
even
Not
2
even.
weeks.
It's felt like a month. But it was quite interesting and really impactful to see. I think you brought over, tell us who you brought over and why, and what the experience was.
Yeah, thank you. So, yes, 2 weeks ago, the University of Guam held its annual conference on island sustainability. I've been aware of it over the years through my different previous roles. And it was something that I was always thinking about wanting to attend, but the timing just never really worked out. This year, I knew that it was taking place, and I also knew that I wanted to attend it. But late last year, particularly after the election, and I got a seat on the Board of Education, I reached out to members of the last Youth Congress that include the current speaker, Vinny Sablon, Senator Aiden Yumo and former Senator Miley Peter. I reached out to them and we sat and I met with them, and this all connects to the conference.
Yes.
But I sat with them to let them know that in this new role that I was taking on the board, I was very committed to, and as was part of my platform, engaging with various stakeholders from the community, and one of those being our youth, through youth leaders. So we met and I shared with them about the conference, and I told them I was gonna, try to figure a way that I could support them attending the conference together with myself. So fast forward a couple months and I worked with Commissioner Camacho and basically had him, through his team, round up at my direction in terms of the reps to our delegation. I asked him to round up all of the high school and middle school student council presidents together with members of the Youth Congress to head to Guam for the conference. And so we were able to bring together 15 youth leaders and 5 chaperones, who I'm very thankful for, that were there to support our attendance. And we attended the conference, and it was an amazing, amazing opportunity. I was so happy to see our student leaders exposed to themes from the conference, to sustainability themes, to green growth themes, which is something too that Governor Palacios is pushing through the CNMI Green Growth Initiative, led by our very own Dean Patty Coleman from NMC, so she was there as well. There were some other partners from CNMI that attended, but for me, the best part of our attendance was seeing our youth leaders not only in a new space with each other, getting to know each other, but also meeting other youth leaders from Guam, Puerto Rico, the Marshall Islands, and Hawaii. So I was just elated that I could help make that happen.
Yeah, and they even got to present to the governor of Guam and the president of the Marshall Islands, and that's a pretty rare opportunity. Most people try to get meetings with these folks, right?
Yes,
and,
yes.
And they got the full day with them. So.
Right. Yeah. So I was so happy, and to your point, I did hear after the presentations on the last day of the summit, which was the youth summit, that President Heine was impressed with the CNMI. So I was very proud to hear that and know that we were well represented by our youth team.
And I understand there might be some future collaborations, right, with some of those other youth leaders from across the region. Yeah, absolutely.
So to that point, I was able to connect with some colleagues on Guam after the conference to include a member of President Heine's team and, in fact, her chief of staff. And I had shared that, I know that the Marshall Islands is hosting this year's Micronesian Islands Forum, which is, of course, the gathering of all of our governors and presidents from across Micronesia. And I put together a little concept paper, which I was able to get in front of President Heine to pitch this idea of having youth voices, and initially at least youth observers from each of the jurisdictions. And what I hear is that she liked the idea, and I believe she's going to be reaching out to the rest of the jurisdictions to also have them have as part of their delegations, invite them to include in their delegations youth youth membership to come and at least be observers at this initial MIF gathering this year. So I'm really excited about that. As you also know, attending the conference at UOG this year were a delegation from the Kamehameha schools, a group of ninth graders who, as you saw, were very impressive.
Yes, they were.
In the work that they're doing through Hawaii's SDG Youth Council, I believe. And that's something that I absolutely believe we can pattern as well in the rest of the islands, and we can start here in the CNMI. But as you know, with the SDGs and the Sustainable Development Goals, that's also something that I had spearheaded during my time as director at the Office of Planning and Development to utilize as the framework, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, as the framework in our comprehensive Sustainable Development Plan. So just having our youth be part of that conversation of sustainable long-term development, what that looks like for each of us, each of the island jurisdictions. But circling back to the delegation from Hawaii, immediately after the conference, I sat with the vice principals who had accompanied the students from Hawaii, and we had a great conversation about the connections that our respective delegations had made. And I had expressed to them my interest in continuing the connection. And so we had discussed potential visits to either be our students going out to the Kamehameha schools, which I think would be a great experience for our students, but at the same time, I thought that we could have a bigger impact if we had their students come here and we design a space so that we can get as many of our youth to connect with their students. And so we actually started talking about it, and I have yet to officially reach out to members of our legislature who are this year the CNMI is hosting the annual Association of Pacific Island Legislatures General Assembly in October. So I pitched the idea of that being a potential time frame for the visit of the schools, the Kamehameha schools students. And so we'll see too if we can put something together that would align with the holding of APIL here on Saipan, and then a visit from this delegation from Hawaii. And Hawaii is also a member of APIL. So there's a lot of like connections, and in fact, one of the vice principals from Kamehameha schools, she knows personally the Hawaii delegate to the APIL. So there's, again, a lot of great connections, and we want to see if we can make that happen.
Yeah, why is it important for you to think regionally, if not globally? Why, because this easily could not be a priority, but it's obviously important to you. Why is it important to put these students in these kind of global thinking spaces?
Just recently, I even had a conversation about our neighbors to the east, I guess, east, northeast, and southwest, if you will, if I have my geography right. But the other three Kofa Islands, Palau, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and the FSM, I've noticed over the years that they have really strong, they've created spaces for really strong youth voices in leadership in their respective governments and community organizations as well. And I think we could learn from that. So one is to empower our youth to be a part of these conversations, but two, this idea of looking to the region is really about best practices and seeing what others are doing and seeing how we can adapt to really continue this idea of positive outcomes for our community. So it's so important to me that not only this idea of regional collaboration and partnership, which is a sustainable development goal, but this idea of having youth voices at the table, and you can attest, our youth leaders have such amazing ideas and energy, and I think that we could absolutely use those ideas and that energy in how we govern our islands in the various sectors.
Yeah, one of the biggest messages from that youth summit was, we're not leaders of tomorrow, we're leading today, right? They were so passionate about that.
Absolutely. That was also echoed by President Jaime, right? In fact, that was her comment to the students. And I want to say, going back to that initial meeting with the Youth Congress members last November after the election, that's exactly what I told them. I said, you guys aren't the leaders of tomorrow, you're the leaders of today. So it's also very exciting that, the new returning Speaker of the Youth Congress, Vinny Sablon, is also a member of our board. So there's just amazing connection and opportunity to just align a lot of these initiatives and priorities, and also ensuring that we have youth voices at the table. So I was also very impressed with our delegation of 15 students too, that also included private school leaders from Mount Carmel, which was Chris De La Cruz, and SIS Nash, Youth Congress member Nash. So it was a great mix, great representation, and also impressive representation from our middle school STUCO leaders as well. So all in all, I'm very excited about that, and I do plan on making this attendance at this annual Conference on Island Sustainability that UOG hosts, make it a regular event for our PSS team.
All right, great. Well, that's all the questions I had. Anything else you want to mention that I didn't ask about before we wrap up?
Part of my platform was engagement with our stakeholders. That continues. And yes, in fact, maybe if I can mention as well, my efforts to engage our stakeholders of the school system, of the public school system, doesn't really mean just ensuring that they're aware of what's going on and creating a pathway for them to express concerns and also solutions and ideas. I've been so open to that, and I've received so many great ideas and solutions to some of the challenges that we're currently facing, but also to be involved. And what I mean by that is the federal funding that PSS receives, that is then parsed out to all the schools. I worked with the commissioner to ensure that our parent stakeholders from each of the schools is involved in the budgeting of those federal funds. So that's a great accomplishment for myself. I really don't like to, make claims, right?
Well, you did it.
Yeah. But I'm so happy that I've been able to create this opportunity for engagement through budgeting of resources. And I'd say too, that's also a lesson learned for myself from when I served at the Tanapak Middle School PTSA and subsequently on the Parent Advisory Council. So it's not enough just to inform our parents about what's going on, at least how I see it. I think it's critical that they also have a seat at the table when it comes to how the monies that our schools are receiving are budgeted, because I've heard lots of great ideas from our parents, and I know that they can also be a great big part in really helping support the success of our schools and ultimately the success of our students.
All right, thank you so much, Kodep. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Tomas.